Eugene, Springfield, Lane County, Oregon. Support our work. Make a donation at STRPOD.com. Thank you for listening to Spent the Rent podcast. And now, here's your host, Patty Rose.
Hello, I am Patty Rose. Welcome to the Spent the Rent podcast. My guest today is Eric Dziura, a candidate for the Eweb Board of Commissioners at large. Eric brings a unique background to the table as a mechanical engineer, a 21-year veteran of both the Army and Navy, and a career educator who has taught electronics and engineering across the Pacific Northwest. He is running to bring a scientist's eye to the Eweb Utility Board and to help oversee massive infrastructure shifts like the Willamette Water Treatment Plant and the future of our local hydroelectric power. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's very good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I want to give a shout out to Mike McFarland, good friend of mine. He recommended that I had you on, and he wanted me to ask you first to talk a little bit about your experience in the Navy as a fighter pilot.
Well, many years ago, back in the 1970s and 1980s, when Russia was actually known as the USSR, we were involved in something called a Cold War. So about that time, I graduated from college, got a commission in the Navy, and went into flight training. And I won't give you the history of all that, but a large part of my duties had to do with flying off an aircraft carrier that was based in Japan, because that's close to the eastern end of the USSR.
Right.
And we were busy watching each other and keeping track of each other, because it was this Cold War.
Sure.
That's what we did.
Yeah. And so when was your military service? 21 years you served, but when did it start? When was the end of that?
So it started basically in the late 60s and ended around 1990. There was a little break in there, but
sure.
that's essentially the period.
So Vietnam, did you serve in Vietnam?
I did not serve in Vietnam, and I have actually never been in combat. I'm not quite sure how I missed it. There were plenty of opportunities in there.
Sure.
But that's the case.
Yeah, still 21 years. Thank you for your service, and something I definitely appreciate. So we're going to get started. Eric, you have had 2 full careers in military and education. So why is the Eweb board the right place for your third act? And what is the number one issue that you're hearing from voters right now?
I think that's a really great way to frame it. I like the way you asked that question. So after retirement from the military, and then followed by working in public education and retiring from that as well, I wanted to continue my life of service at the community level. And that's particularly important now because it's, as we all know, it's very difficult to affect things at the national level as an individual.
Oh, big time. Yeah, big time.
But what you can do as an individual in a community like Eugene is you can affect, one person can make a difference and can bring about one change. So the third act for me is about using my knowledge and experience to advocate for the Eugene community so that Eweb operates affordably, reliably, and resiliently, and in such a way as to minimize environmental and climate damage. Eweb is the right place because for me, it's like the intersection of infrastructure, affordability, and climate responsibility. And it's one of the few institutions where decisions have immediate real-world impacts on people's bills, their homes, businesses, and their sense of security. As far as what I see as the number one issue, I think right now it's affordability. I think that's on everyone's mind at lots of different levels, and I won't talk about those in particular, but I think it's important for people to understand the need to invest in infrastructure and to respond for climate change. But they're also worried about rising costs, and what they want to know, of course, is, can I afford this, and will my bill keep going up?
Yeah.
So for me, the challenge and the opportunity is to make sure we move forward on climate reliability in a way that's practical and transparent, but also affordable for the people that live here.
Right. So you're running to be on the board of commissioners for Eweb, and can you answer, how would the average person in Eugene be affected by what the board actually does? Like, how much of an impact does the board actually have on their daily life and beyond just the monthly bill?
Oh, good question. So the monthly bill, as you mentioned, is the obvious part, but it goes well beyond that. And I think the biggest thing is that it's about reliability. Whether the lights stay on during a storm, whether your heat works in the winter, whether your business can operate without interruption. And it's also about public safety. During events like the great ice storm here, power outages affect everything from emergency response to people being able to stay warm or keep food from spoiling. It's also about water quality and security. Every time someone turns on the tap, they're relying on Eweb to deliver clean, safe drinking water, and also to protect the watershed, the Mackenzie watershed, where we get our water.
Nice, yeah. So, okay, the next section is the engineering mindset. You have a background in mechanical engineering. So do you look at Eweb's $490 million budget differently than a career politician might?
I think I do. An engineering mindset is really about systems operations and trade-offs. You're always asking, what are the inputs, what are the constraints, and what happens if we change one part of the system? With a utility like Eweb, and I should mention here, this is a combined utility. It's both water and electric. So it's a very complex operation, okay? It means understanding how decisions about infrastructure, rates, reliability, and climate goals all interact. It also means being very focused on long-term consequences. Engineers are trained to think in life cycles, what something costs not just today, but over 10, 20, or 30 years. That's critical for a utility where a decision today can affect rates and reliabilities for decades. And finally, it's about risk management. You're constantly asking, what are the weak points? What could fail? What is the cost of not acting? So when I look at the budget, I don't see just numbers. I see a system that has to balance affordability, reliability, and future needs. My goal would be to make sure those decisions are grounded in careful analysis and clear priorities.
Where do you see the most waste or inefficiency in how our current grid is built?
Okay, so I'll pick on inefficiency. I think that's the term that is important here. There are in any utility actually, but also in Eweb, there are what I will call inherited inefficiencies that are related to how the system was built over time. It's not a static thing. It's constantly changing, being updated, and so forth.
Sure.
And so that's happening all the time. So our grid was designed decades ago for a one-way flow of power from large generators out to our customers. Today, we're asking it to do much more: support electrification, integrate distributed energy, and handle extreme weather. That creates friction. So I'll just mention these in passing just to keep this answer reasonably short. The components of that are aging infrastructure. We have to deal with that, and we have to replace the infrastructure so we still have a reliable system. The second thing, and this is very important, is managing peak demand. So you have a baseline flow where the amount of energy is manageable, that you're obtaining for the utility is relatively manageable. But then we have heat domes, we have polar vortexes, we have ice storms, and all of those sorts of things. And we have winter, of course. And when that happens, the demand shoots up rapidly. And so we have to manage that because those can be very expensive events for us.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the ice storm, I think, in a little bit.
Yes,
and that was definitely a huge eye-opener to what can happen in with climate change and whatnot. So it was funny. I remember I was talking to a friend. I'm like, this is a 200-year storm. And they're like, no, it's not. I'm like, yeah, there's 200-year-old trees that are down. Like, that's an indicator right there. It's pretty simple.
Yes.
So Eweb is currently designing a $160 million treatment plant on the Willamette River to give us a second water source. Do you view this as an absolute necessity for Eugene's survival, or is it a price tag that may be too high for residents to swallow?
At this point, I think I see it as an absolute necessity. It's one that we have to handle very carefully, but yes, we do. Right now, Eugene relies on a single source, the Mackenzie River. It's an excellent source, but from a risk standpoint, relying on one source is a vulnerability. That's because of climate change, which brings about wildfires, the possibility of contamination from chemical spills and those sorts of things, or also a major natural disaster, which could disrupt that supply. So I support the creation of a second source on the Willamette River to ensure long-term resilience and public safety. I will say, though, that I understand that the price tag is a really big number. And that people are right to be concerned about it. A $160 million project has to be phased carefully, which means spread out, justified clearly, and managed responsibly, so that it doesn't create unnecessary rate pressure. So, and I'll just mention one thing in passing. In July of this year, the Eweb board is due to make a final decision about whether to go ahead with the project. I mean, they've been laying the groundwork now for some time. July will be an important
Wow, so that's
milestone.
coming up, yeah.
It is coming up, yes.
Are the Eweb board, are the meetings public? Are they video public? Like you can watch them on
Both.
YouTube?
They're
Yeah,
both. So
yeah,
you
yeah.
can, yes.
You can actually go to the events themselves, yeah.
Yes, you can, or you can watch video of them.
And that would probably be on Eweb's website, or maybe
it's on,
Eugene.
yes, you can find links on it, and they're available on YouTube.
Yeah,
yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So the decision to decommission and remove the Leeberg Dam is a massive shift for the Mackenzie River. So do you agree with the board's decision to stop generating power there, or would you have pushed to repair it instead of get rid of it?
So that was one of the first things that I talked to when I began researching Eweb in preparation for running for office. And I talked to a number of the commissioners and went back over the record and so forth. And based on what I know today, I agree with the decision to decommission. The core issue is that the Leeberg facility has significant structural and seismic concerns, and the cost to repair was very high, likely higher than the cost of the power it would produce. So it was a question of safety and cost and long-term value to the ratepayer. So I know that the Board of Commissioners that was when they were going through the decision process went to great lengths to study it very carefully, to have many public hearings and so forth. And I think that their process was very robust.
It's interesting to me how many people do turn out to those kind of meetings, you know, that are really, they get their nails sharpened beforehand,
yes,
but which is good because this is life. This is our community, and so
is good, yes.
It's good that in Eugene we have a lot of participation in civics. And I think that's something that I really appreciate about doing this show, because I've had my friend group has broadened, at least by age demographic, big time, where there's a lot more people that I'm 44 now, but I'm 44 going on 25. But we'll move on. So the Carmen Smith project and renewable goals. The Carmen Smith hydroelectric project is finally nearing its return to service as we aim for 100% renewable energy. How vital is this project to our local energy independence? And can you explain what that project is?
So Carmen Smith is very important, but it's important in a very specific way. And this, I think, will answer that part of your question. So it's not just about adding renewable energy. It's also about reliable, dispatchable, carbon-free power. What I mean by dispatchable is hydropower is almost the perfect source of electric power,
right?
Because you can turn it on and turn it off on a dime. It's not brittle in any way, shape, or form. And what's important about that is that the amount of power that's on the grid at any one time varies widely, because loads come on, loads go off, temperatures rise, temperatures fall, and all those sorts of things. So the grid is delicate in the sense that it has to be carefully balanced. Otherwise, it stops working.
Mm-hmm.
So hydropower makes that much easier to do. So with regard to Carmen Smith specifically, Carmen Smith as an Eweb asset helps provide that flexibility. It helps stabilize the system. It reduces reliance on market purchases, which are typically very expensive. That is outside your existing contracts and so forth. And it gives Eweb more control over cost and reliability. So overall, yes, I think it's an important part of Eweb's portfolio of energy sources.
So we have in Walterville and Leeberg projects are largely offline. So is it becoming a situation where we're too dependent on buying power from outside of Oregon? And can you kind of explain how that works as well? I mean, a lot of times, I'm sure that the public would be kind of unaware. So if we don't have enough resources to have enough power for our communities, especially at large, like past, Eugene, Springfield, we have to buy from outside.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And I'll just say something about that. So the majority of electric power comes from the Bonneville Power Administration, which is it was designed for public use, and so the electricity that we get is relatively inexpensive compared to other sources of energy around the country, and it's only available to public utilities.
Mm-hmm.
So we have the benefit of that. As high as our electric bills are, and I'm not saying they're not, it could be a lot worse.
Sure.
So to answer your question, I would say it does increase our exposure somewhat, but I wouldn't say that we're too dependent yet. What it does mean is that we're more exposed to market prices and availability, especially during peak demand and regional stress events. That's why Carmen Smith Online is so important. The other projects, it does mean that we have to balance our portfolio a little bit more, because we don't have control of those resources.
When you buy power from outside of the area, it's probably at it's more expensive than the power we generate, correct? But it's just
Yes,
it's a way to balance. I mean, obviously we would just do that if it was cost effective.
Yes.
But
I'll mention this too, and I'm sure most people don't know this, but along with every other utility operator in the country, Eweb has a control room.
Sure.
in our operations center, and part of that control room are a group of financial whizzes who follow in real time the price of electricity at any given moment. And so if there is a sudden loss or a sudden increase in demand, which certainly does happen,
sure,
they can immediately hit the button that buys the power that we need at the most reasonable price.
It's like crypto. No.
Well, in the future, that may come into play.
I'm sure that's probably part of it. Yeah. It'll be exchanged that way financially so that it's faster, I'm sure.
Yes.
So the ice storm reality check. And in 2024, storms left thousands of Eugene residents without power for days. From an infrastructure standpoint, what is the big project that you champion to make sure that the grid doesn't fail next time if we hit 20 degrees or below?
Okay. So if I had to point to one big project, it would be comprehensive grid hardening and vegetation management program focused on our most vulnerable circuits. The ice storm showed us that there are a lot of outages weren't caused by a single failure, which is to be expected in an ice storm. I grew up in upstate New York.
Yeah. So it's basically Michigan.
We had ice storms every couple of years. So I've been through many of them. I wouldn't say I've ever experienced one as severe as the one that Eugene.
Yeah, I was living in Springfield at the time, and I think it was worse over there, honestly. But
yes, it was.
I mean, and it was chaotic, and I learned a lot about local civics and the way that the mayor. I've talked about this a lot. Sean Van Gordon, he was very careful in answering any question because he came on my podcast like the first day, and he was like, I don't want to speak out of turn because then if sub with Springfield Utility Board, if I say something wrong, they're going to spend the first 10, 15 minutes of their presser kind of answering the questions that I was wrong about. And so at first, I mean, I do think that, there's never a perfect candidate. I definitely prefer him over David Lovehall, but I was kind of disappointed that he wouldn't answer questions. And then when he said that, I'm like, that's actually a good point because we have such a blended government. It's just, balance of powers that I think it's important for people to know how things are done because people get mad at certain people and it's like, that has nothing to do with my office, so the ice storm was pretty wild. Do you think that burying power lines across the whole city is a realistic goal? No. Or is it cost prohibitive for the public utility? I do think up the McKenzie when they're gone, that's a good place to start because if you're going to put them back up, you could do it underground, but you don't think it's a good idea?
It's unfortunately, it was always the case that stringing wires on poles and towers and all those sorts of things was less expensive than burying it. There are also some downsides because sometimes it can make, believe it or not, having it up on a pole like that where you can see it and you don't have to dig for it can actually make repairs faster.
Sure.
You're right. There is, to point it out, because there is more vulnerability to falling branches and all those sorts of things. But what we need, I think, it would be very, very expensive to change the system. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is what we need to do is to harden the system that we have now so that we minimize the impact of big storms.
That ice storm was wild. I've never seen, on my street that I was living on in Springfield, kind of by Riverview Elementary, we literally had a power line that was on the ground that was sparking and it's just like, and it was wild. And we did have power at that time. I don't know how.
The other thing that happened too, and this is just unheard of really, was that the Eugene airport was closed for 3 days.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Okay. So where we at? So you've worked with groups like Beyond Toxics and Focus on Equity. What specific eWeb policies would you implement to make sure that the spending the rent that doesn't become a choice between housing and keeping the lights on?
So it's as far as my campaign is concerned, this is one of the things that I've emphasized in all of my public engagements and my posts and those sorts of things. So there are a number of things that eWeb is doing and can improve upon going forward. The first is to strengthen and simplify income-based bill assistance. The programs exist, but they need to be easy to access and scale to match rising costs. Second is this is that as important as that is, because my philosophy is no one should ever lose access to their power and water because they can't pay their bill.
Right.
That has to be a baseline thing that we need to do. But the other thing that needs to happen is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, there are many homes and buildings and businesses and so forth, structures in Eugene that are very old.
Oh yeah, of
and
course.
They have very poor insulation. They have older heating and cooling systems, or no cooling system at all, and those sorts of things. And so, what the second thing we need to do is to expand efficiency programs targeted to low-income households and renters. The most effective way to help people long-term is to lower their bills permanently. The immediate response, yes, that's important, but what you want to do is over the long haul.
Sure.
Okay? That's the key to doing this. And this is one way to do it is to upgrade the homes so that they're much more energy efficient, they're much better insulated, and all those sorts of things.
The programs with taking windows where you can, that's a huge thing. And this guy showed me this demonstration. There's way too much expensive to buy the windows, but but it showed like the heat just going straight through, some of these really thin ones. Sorry to interrupt.
Yes, that's right. So, and then the other possibility is a couple of other smaller possibilities, but still useful, is we need some flexible payment options, like maybe an extended payment plan. And then finally, there are other agencies in Lane County that help out with this sort of thing. And I think Eweb should take the lead in coordinating with them so that we make the best and most efficient and fairest and equitable use of those resources and reach as many people as we possibly can.
I think one of the biggest struggles as somebody that has Eweb and just as a renter now, that it's like you just don't know what your bill is going to be. 1 month so I know that there's a way that you can balance it out over 12 months, but I've only been living here for under a year. So at that point I will do that. But man, it's like it goes from, you're using tons of heat, then you're using tons of air conditioning, and it's just, it depends on how the stuff gets used. And I don't know if people realize, but if you leave your phone charger plugged in, you're paying for that at all times.
Yes.
It's always pulling electricity.
But the point you just made is very, very important. When the weather spikes, your bill is going to spike.
Mm-hmm.
You need, unless you're living in a more modern or remodeled home that has the latest in terms of insulation and high efficiency heat pumps and those sorts of things, your bill is going to spike.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people that live in some older homes that they don't have like central air or whatever you would call it. They just use space heaters and fans and the things that are close by. Still taking electricity, but it's such a trade-off because it's not going to go through the whole house. So do you think that Eweb's current customer care assistance programs are doing enough for the community?
Yeah, and I think I just sort of addressed that, but I will give you a bit more complete answer. I think the current programs are helpful, but they're not sufficient for the level of need that we're seeing, and I think that need is going to grow. So Eweb's customer care provides a one-time bill credit of $280, and then the utility distributes about $1 million per year in assistance across all programs. And that makes a difference, but there's a couple of limitations. One is it's one time, and it's also first come, first serve. And this is one thing that concerns me. So at some point in the screening process, to decide when Eweb makes a determination about whether someone is eligible for this assistance, you have to sign up within a certain time period. Well,
right.
You can do it by phone, you can do it on the web and all those sorts of things, but it's a scramble. There are a bunch of people waiting to do that, and some people are going to be left out. And they may be left out because they have a lousy internet connection, or they can't get through on the phone, and that's not fair.
Right.
I think there are better ways to do that. I won't talk about it now for the sake of time, but there needs to be a fairer way to give everyone a reasonable chance to have access to those,
I understand that the programs like that, they're limited in their resources and funding. There's only a certain amount of money that they have for it. So it's tough, and how do you go about it? So let's move on to, let's see. Eweb's upcoming strategic plans involve deciding on the conditions of continuance for several major projects. If you're elected, which project are you the most likely to pause or reevaluate once you see the full books?
Okay. So that's not a question that I can answer until I actually see the real.
I guess that's fair. Yeah, it's because you are running.
It's a good question. But let me just and I will answer it, but let me just change this. Let me just change it slightly. Okay?
Sure.
So what I would each time this happens, and I just mentioned that the new water plant is coming up, the Willamette treatment plant is coming up at a critical decision point. So here's what you want to do. And all these major projects are planned out well in advance. Any major capital project should meet 3 tests. Is it essential for reliability and/or public safety? Is it the most cost-effective way to achieve the goal? And is the timing right given current rate pressures? All of those things have to come into play. those are the kinds of things that Eweb will be looking at in July to see, yes, now we're getting the latest estimate on what the costs are going to be, because costs do nothing but rise as you wait and so forth. So that's the lens you have to bring to it. And I think this project is very important, but at some point going forward in the future, as rates rise and those sorts of things, you may have to pause the project. It may be necessary to do that. So.
What is the biggest risk facing eWeb's financial stability in the next 5 years? And before you answer, I worry because I see a lot of layoffs. I see a lot of employment issues on the horizon. And so, I mean, that might be your answer, but you can talk a little bit more at length on that. What do you think is this financial stability question?
Well, I would say the biggest risk is cost pressure from multiple directions at the same time. So we're doing major capital investments like water infrastructure and grid upgrades at the same time. And this is the part that really concerns me. At the same time as rising wholesale power costs, inflation, and increasing demand from electrification. So we went through a period where electric rates were relatively stable because we were good at conserving, we were good at increasing energy efficiency and all those sorts of things. But there are now much greater demands. We have AI.
I know. I was going to ask you about AI.
That's right, and that's a big driver, and there are other factors as well. So I think that's the answer to the question is these things that are possibly driving up the cost.
Sure, and just staying on top of technology. I mean, AI. Let's talk about that briefly. Sure. That in a sense, I don't know if a lot of people understand, even the people that are really against it. I don't know the full scope of what's true. Yes. So it takes a ton of water, correct? Yes. And so now I guess I'll ask it this way: if AI was going to be created in Eugene, would you support that project? And if there would be benefits, obviously, for the local area, and what are your thoughts on not the ethics, but I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's just not, but what are your thoughts on the ethics of using it?
Well, two big questions.
Yeah.
I would say that as far as in Eugene, at this point, I would be opposed to it, and I'll tell you why. The AI and is supporting infrastructure, which is really the problem from our perspective, from the cost perspective and so forth, is very much in flux. There are lots of actors at play, lots of actors involved, including governments and so forth. There's a lot of pushback from government on that, and we need to wait a bit and see how that shakes out, because there's no question that putting a data center in Eugene or in Lane County, let's say, would be very, very burdensome for our ratepayers if, for example, the company involved was not contributing to paying for the power, or if government didn't step in to help out with those sorts of things. Just doing it right now could create some real serious disruption.
Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, I don't think I've even read anything that there's any proposals about AI being done here. Maybe you have. I don't think that for some reason it's all in the Midwest, in places that they're not close to water.
And in Eastern Oregon.
Yeah, there is some in Eastern Oregon.
Some in Eastern Oregon, yes.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be able to be here without people breaking out the windows. But so yes. So you're running for an at-large seat, which means that you represent everyone.
Yes.
How will you bridge the gap between the technical engineer talk and then the board and the actual concerns of a working class family?
So the nice thing about having been a teacher for 20 years and teaching at a number of different levels of education, from third and fourth year physics students to community college students who are doing their remedial math courses, so that they can continue on with their education in community college. And that's a wide span. So what you have to do, just like you need to when you're depending on who you're talking to, is you have to tailor your message to the audience.
Sure.
And I've had a lot of experience doing that. So and it's in terms of communicating with the public and being a representative, that's really basically the heart of the job. So you can say, well, a working family doesn't want to talk in terms of load growth or capital plans. What they want to know is will my bill go up? Will my power stay on? Can I afford this next year? So the idea here is that I have to work to translate decisions into those real life impacts, and that's what I can do.
Sure.
And I've been doing that throughout my campaign, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's a big part of being an Eweb commissioner. So you use plain language. You make sure that you're a visible presence in the community. I've been doing that while I'm campaigning, but that's going to continue. And then the third thing is measure what matters to people, not the technical metrics, but things like bill impacts, outage duration, and access to assistance programs, and then also access to energy efficiency programs. I didn't put that down here, but that's a very important thing. And then the flip side of that is you then have to take those concerns back to your fellow commissioners and the general manager and the staff and so forth, so that they know what the community wants of them. I mean, that's the whole purpose of having an elected board,
right?
So that the community will have a say in how the utility is run.
And so that leads into my follow-up of how can Eweb improve its transparency so that people feel like their voices actually, matter in these billion-dollar decisions. I want to say first too that there is the videos that you can go watch. There is the board meetings that you can attend. And it's a difficult task. I can only imagine that like the cost effectiveness of like maybe printing out flyers that get sent out and maybe they don't read them because you have to pay for those, and have it shipped out. So how do you think that Eweb can improve its transparency?
So I think what has to happen is the transparency has to be earlier and clearer and more participatory. So first of all, earlier, people need to hear about major decisions while they're still being shaped, not after they're essentially decided. I'll give you an example very briefly, okay? So there's been some controversy about Eweb doing some tests with the University of Oregon's electrical generation system. When Eweb first communicated to the public about it, it was a very short note on their website, and it didn't really address a lot of people's concerns in the community. They published after they got slapped for doing that. They came back again with a much more detailed response, and it may not have satisfied anyone, but at least it was clear. So that's the kind of thing you do. You need to get ahead of these things. You need to anticipate what's important to people and all those sorts of things. And the other thing is, I'll just talk about participation and wrap that up. So making it more participating means not just formal hearings or meetings for that matter. You have to be out there at neighborhood meetings, and I'm on the Active Bethel Community Neighborhood Association, so I know how important that is. Online tools, social media, which is where you meet a lot of people these days. What we're doing here today, is a very helpful kind of thing, and I hope I'll get invited back.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
If I win the election,
right.
And things like that. This is something that I've seen used elsewhere, and that is when you have a major project that is underway, and Eweb does have projects underway right now. You have simple public-facing dashboards that gives people a sense of where we are with the project and what the costs are and all those sorts of things, and of course offer the opportunity to provide questions and so forth. So those are some of the.
I know one thing, and I'm sure that Eweb is pretty knowledgeable about all this, but I've got a friend that's really into marketing, and so frequently asked questions pages now with SEO, which is search engine optimization. This is some very, very important information, actually. So search engine optimization is the old school way of like keywords. So you'd find something based on like if you're searching for a haircut. Well, I'm a barber, so if you're searching for a haircut, that's how. Now it's AI is using what is AEO, which is artificial intelligence engine optimization. So if you do a frequently asked questions page on your website, Google will automatically populate that into like when you're searching for stuff, it'll answer those questions a lot more, efficiently. So anybody building a website for a business or for anything like that, the frequently asked question page is huge, and I'm sure Eweb has a lot of that. So like you said, you have to prepare for what people.
I would like to see
more of that.
I am a big fan of FAQs.
And I think me too. And I think it could be super thorough. And sometimes, I know that with this, especially this episode, there's a lot of technical stuff. But at the same time, you can't insult the audience. Like if they have time to think about it, then they can. So if the words are there it's not going anywhere. That's right. Something like an FAQ or a frequently asked questions page on the website. So every project I think should have a thorough deep dive into anything you could possibly know about it. So that you don't have these two dads sitting out there like, what are they doing that for? But so now if you're sitting here, actually real quick, talk about how it works on the ballot. So you're running, but it's how many seats are there and how many openings are there? So it's kind of a field. Are you running against one individual, or is it more about, vote for four?
That's an important question, and I'll explain why. I'll preface it. I'll tell you why it's important, then I'll explain. Whoever wins, there are two candidates for this spot in the primary. the way primaries work, the person that wins the primary will very likely be the next Eweb commissioner. And the reason is this: if someone wins the primary, that means they automatically got 50% plus one at least, and that's the only name that goes to the general ballot. Mm-hmm. So it's possible you could have a well-organized write-in campaign, but highly unlikely. So if people want to have an input about who their next Eweb at-large commissioner is going to be, they should very definitely vote in the May primary.
Right.
That's very important.
And it's May 19th, I believe. 19th, yeah. Yes. So if you are successful and win this seat, and you're sitting here and it's 2030, and you've just finished your first term, what is the one project or policy change that you'd want to be able to point back and say, hey, I made that happen, or I had something to do with that?
Yeah. So this sort of goes to it has to do with affordability and those sorts of things. I mean, people need to be able to pay for their power and water and everything else in their lives. So if we're sitting here in 2020, the thing that I want to point to is community-wide electrification and efficiency program that actually made a difference in people's lives. Not just a plan, but real results. Thousands of homes upgraded with efficient electric heating, lower monthly bills for families, meaningful reductions in emissions, and programs that work for renters as well as homeowners and business people, all of those sorts of things. If I could do that or even get halfway there,
right,
that would be, it would have been well worth my time.
Yeah. It's hard, when you're running a campaign, it's tough because, the right people for the right job sometimes aren't going to be the right people for the right campaign. Meaning like, it's just, you have to have all of the different skills, and it's so difficult, because I know that a lot of times people are like, well, I just didn't really feel what they were saying. It's like, well, they know what they're talking about. So that's kind of more important than the campaign. Yeah. So it's really tough in this short cycle. And I just wish people would pay more attention and not think of it like it's sports, because I mean, I've done that. And CNN is to blame for a lot of that, where they're like, they'll have these like images of the candidates clashing and like smashing into each other. Yep. But it's not just CNN. I mean, obviously the other ones are probably worse, but in general, it's difficult. So I'm glad that you could come on and at least talk a little bit more at length about some of your goals on the board. And shout out to Mike McFarland for always sending me good guests. And he said this is kind of a in talk situation now, but he's going to come on and host the podcast, and he's going to interview me, which will be really neat.
That's cool.
So he's somebody that's kind of a mentor to me and somebody I really appreciate. So Eric Dziura, did I say that right? It's DZ, which is just it's not something that's in my language. What is that?
It's Polish.
It's Polish. Yes. Okay. My dad and I were talking, and he thinks we're German, and I did my ancestry stuff, and I'm Hungarian and Yugoslavian. Oh. And my dad, shout out to my dad was like, no, we're German. They took a lot of that over. And I'm like, when? In World War II? Our family moved here in the 1800s. First of all. Second of all, if you don't know the difference between the Eastern and Western Europeans, then you don't know anything about Europe. And so, I mean, Poland, maybe that's Germany. Maybe you could say that, like in some ways, but you cannot.
It has over the years been part of
exactly multiple times, but I don't think you can say that about Yugoslavia and Hungary. Yep. And then he's like, oh no, they took over that, and I'm like, they took over Northern Africa. So do you think that people in Libya are German? Why not? but on that note, Eric Dziura for Eweb, you can go to his website, which is
ericforeweb.com.
See, that's smart. You didn't do the DZ. Yeah. So ericforeweb.com if you want to find out more. I really like your website. It's pretty informative. And so, yeah, thank you so much for being here. This has been a treat. And remember, guys, May 19th, make sure to vote.